I don't know how many times I've done this, but I know that the first time I spoke to this group was probably 2008, possibly the beginning of the end for many of us. But I remember distinctly that I said, as bad as this year is, it's the best year you're going to have for the next 5 years. And two people cussed me and left the room. So hopefully I'll have a little better news this time. I'm going to talk about really the overall U.S. housing market. I'm going to talk about the Tallahassee market. And then I'm going to talk to you about what I think are the key takeaways that you can get from the economic data that we're getting that surrounds the housing market. I've been forecasting since 2007, my first time to go broke. I was pretty full of myself prior to that. Once I got empty, I started paying close attention to the market. I can tell you that the tools and the resources I have today are better than anything I've ever had. It's just amazing how much data has moved to the internet and how much of it is tappable and usable if you know where to look. Right now, there's just absolutely major changes occurring in and out of housing, and it's going to affect us all greatly in the coming years. I was trying to figure out how can I portray my confidence level about being accurate in forecasting for you today. I borrowed this one from the Weather Tiger, and I really felt it summarized the housing market pretty clearly. What you have to expect is chaos. Anyone who stands in front of you and tells you they know what's about to happen for the next 2 years is an idiot or a liar, and I'm not sure which one I'd rather follow. At the end of the day, there's a lot of good data out there. There's a lot of people that talk about what we're doing, but the reality is our future is in Chairman Powell's hands and the hands of people who make mortgage policy. When they decided, they meaning the government, decided they wanted to crash the housing market in 2008, they were very effective. A lot of people felt that builders had overbuilt America, and that was what the problem was. Okay, the reality is, in 2012, what we felt was the very bottom of a very ugly market, the U.S. was down 1.2 million homes over what was needed. That was in 2012. Okay, today, we're down more than 3 million homes that are needed. There's a housing shortage in America, and the way that we can confirm it is we look at what home prices are doing and we look what rents are doing. Home prices are soaring, but rents are starting to drop. You can just assume they've made it very easy to buy a home, and the rental market's shedding homes to the for sale market. The opposite is true. When they make it very hard to buy, people need to move to the rental market. Here's the problem. Year-over-year rents are up 15% last month. That's nationally and locally. So today, when someone goes to a lender and the lender says, you can't qualify for what you want to live in, they can't go to the rental market and find it either. We have a housing shortage. We're going to talk a little bit about what I'm seeing on that. Most of you in the room know better than I what the problems are. And I can tell you it's not a Tallahassee problem. This is a U.S. level problem, and that's why today I spend most of my time studying the U.S. housing market. The U.S. housing market typically gets to its destination about 6 months before us, so it's kind of like cheating ahead. So we're going to cover the U.S. housing market in good detail. Let's start with existing home sales. Okay, and why are existing home sales important to builders? Well, because they basically tell you what the demand for your product's going to be. There's a lot of geniuses out there on the internet that publish supply and demand for new homes, and it's a ridiculous, ridiculous statistic. You need to know the bigger market. Existing homes market is 80% of the data, 90% of the data today. So if you study the existing homes market, you will have a good feel for what the demand for your product's going to be. If you look at the gray line in this graph, that is the one-year trend of the months of supply of homes for sale in the U.S., and we are 2 months off of a historic low. What that means is there's not enough houses, and it's so significant that it has never been this low. When we compare supply and demand, it's never been this low. When we only look at real supply, At the top of the market, right before the crash, there were over 4 million homes on the market. Today, there's less than 1.3 million. It's a 70% decline in inventory, and it's causing home prices to soar, it's causing rents to soar, and yet what are all the reports you're reading in most publications today? What are home prices doing? They're crashing, according to everything I'm reading and hearing, and it's impossible. Now, it's very possible in markets. Tallahassee could be grossly oversupplied while the country's undersupplied. There's enough panic in the market, prices can come down due to panic. Okay, but right now, we don't have enough homes. All the kids that live in their basement that are making all the commentary online are saying, I'm just going to wait. Well, yeah, mom and dad appreciate that. But what about the people that are relocating? What do? They can't go, well, I'm not buying, the market sucks, because then they have to rent and the market sucks. There's not enough houses. So if I'm a builder, I'm trying to crack the code on getting inventory to the market. Okay, in the U.S., again, we're a month or two right off of rock bottom. There are not enough homes. So as you read these reports and all these Fortune magazine coming out saying home prices are going to tumble for the next 2, 3, 5 years, I'm like, what database are they looking at? Hey, there's this concept called recency bias. Recency bias makes us typically lean heavily on our most recent memories and less so on our historic memories. Home prices never drop. They dropped for 5 straight years from 2008 to 2012, but it was the first time home prices had dropped since World War II, which was the first time home prices had dropped since the Great Depression. Home prices don't drop, they go up. Why do they go up? Are your costs getting cheaper? Guess what? They never did get cheaper. As costs rise, new construction costs go up, new construction pulls up the resale market. Can resale home prices drop? Sure. If we build too many homes, good luck doing that. So right now, the smart money is buying homes. I don't know if you're paying attention, but investment banks and venture funds are getting into the home buying business. It started 20-something years ago with them dabbling with student housing. I suspect the majority of student housing around the country now is corporately held in New York City. They never were in student housing prior to about 2002. Everybody in this room probably had more holdings in student housing than any large Wall Street fund. Not the case today. Well, they got the taste of steady rents. Steady rents beats all market cycles. So we're now seeing them get into the single-family detached home purchasing business. Currently, they do not hold 1% in any state of all homes. That is the biggest trend that's going to change over the next 10 years. You're going to see major Amazon-size companies come in and take over housing. And what that means to all of us is a more steady buying stream, soaring prices, great opportunity, but you have to put yourself in a position to take advantage of it. Okay, I've talked to several builders about buying their whole subdivisions because we've got people looking. Tallahassee is going to be kind of like the last place it happens, but you know, we're prompting. In Atlanta, build-to-rent subdivisions are quite normal, 2,000, 3,000 units. I'm sure no one in here would like to have that problem. So what we've got to do is recognize that there's a major supply imbalance. All the while, the media is going to talk about why home prices have to crash, and they have to crash because they remember 2008. And we're going to look at a few things and see how different today is versus 2008. Housing prices and rent inflation. This is the little checked box on there shows the last 2 years. Home prices, U.S. home prices are up 31%. Rents are up 21%. My rent data lags. What that means is the Federal Reserve that keeps the data on most of the housing that we get is continuously updated in the past, meaning they throw out a number and then they go, here's the numbers, and all your numbers change in the past. Okay, rents have always lagged, meaning we see the rent like this right now, it's actually like this. Rents are actually up over 30% in that same graph, but the data is still 4 months behind on getting to where I've already plotted it. And what does that mean? Well, That means whether you're buying a home or renting a home, your monthly cost to carry that home is up 31% in 2 years. I haven't checked, but I don't think our state workers have gotten a 31% raise in the last 2 years. So what we're going to find is we're going to have this interesting problem where you go, there's no way prices can come down and nobody can afford these houses. We're going to have to solve that problem. Usually when the answer is no way, the way is the government, which is a very scary proposition. Interesting stuff that you might know, but maybe a different way to look at it. The U.S. pipeline of new homes, okay, is showing that it's taking right now a little over 10 months to build a home. Historically, it's been 6 to 7 months. Is that where we're finding in Tallahassee? I'm curious. I don't even know.
Yes.
So if you think about it, how many homes are under construction? Well, if the historic pipeline was 6.5 months long, and today's pipeline is 10 months long, that's a 50% difference. So if there's 50% more homes in the pipeline today, that's the same amount as there were back in normal times. It's taking longer to get done, there's more in the pipeline, but the end of the pipeline, the production level, should be similar to what we would have seen in the past at 6.5 months. The reason this is important, every other news channel I ever turn on say, we're getting ready to see an explosion of new homes. And I'm like, yeah, you said that 2 years ago. You know, where are they? Biggest question for people like me who are not builders. Are there more homes under construction today because there's no buyers out there to buy them? Or are there more homes under construction today because y'all can't get the windows and the appliances to finish the homes? I'll tell you, we have data to answer that question at the national level. This is perhaps a little confusing. This is the new homes pipeline. If you see the gray shaded area in the background, that is the total pipeline. That's everything that's permitted, under construction, completed construction, not sold. If you look at the white line is new homes completed, not sold. It's at a historic low. The pipeline's never had this many homes in it, and we have less than 2% are completed, ready to sell. In other words, homes are selling. They're just not getting built. The total pipeline's at about 75% of where it was when the market crashed. The difference is, look where the white line was in 2007, 2008 versus where it is today. We're at a historic low of homes available from builders. Available meaning close tomorrow. New homes median months of supply. All-time low, little over 2 months of supply of new homes. We got the biggest pipeline in a long, long time, but the available homes for buyers, all-time low. One thing that these reports don't even calculate is the number of homes that are under construction that are already sold. That's why the homes completed number is so low, because when they're completed, you close on them. So a lot of the reports about overbuilding are crazy. Las Vegas is overbuilt. Most of California is probably overbuilt. The rest of us, we're starving for homes. Another question I get is, what about foreclosures? I'm like, what about foreclosures? We're at pre-pandemic lows on loan forbearances and on loan delinquencies. And something to think about, and I'll even skip to the next graph because it really answers this. Think about where the market is today versus where it was when the crash hit us. Think about the difference in debt and equity in our market today compared to 15 years ago. The first star on the left there, that's 15 years ago. The red line, that's the debt. The blue field, that's the equity. When the debt is above the equity, lenders get nervous. Well, look where we are today. It's the reverse. It's the opposite. So Joe homeowner gets in trouble, loses his job, can't make his mortgage payment, goes into default. He just sells his house, pays off the debt, pockets the cash, and then can't rent because he can't afford that either. There is no foreclosure crisis. There's a recession getting ready to hit us really, really hard. Could it change things? Yeah, it could. I think the Fed is motivated to make it hurt really, really bad. But foreclosures have no impact on the housing market. In the short run, you see some homes go from homeowners to tenants, and homes go from the for sale market to the for rent market or back into the for sale market. But whenever you take one consumer in one house, there's no change. We need two consumers in one house or two houses in one consumer to change something. A foreclosure just moves someone from the ownership to the tenancy side of the market. And it doesn't bring in a new house. It's just a change in ownership. It takes you guys to change supply and demand in the market. We're going to get a little into the Fed's warped theory of changing the housing market. This is a graph that compares the Fed funds rate, which is every month they get together and they tell swap stories and then they change what banks get to borrow money for. And the Fed funds rate changed yesterday, but it changed in line with what the market was expecting, and we probably saw mortgage interest rates tweak down a little bit. Is that right? Okay, because it was already kind of priced in the market. Here's the thing, the Fed made it abundantly clear that it's going to do it again and again, not just again. Interest rates are going to be at 8% at the end of the year. I am the last person you should go to for mortgage guidance. But I will tell you, anyone that understands mortgages will tell you it's not related to the Fed funds rate. I will show you statistical proof that they might be unrelated, but they all do the same thing at the same time all the time. This graph plots the Fed funds rate and it plots the 30-year fixed mortgage rate over time. Then it comes up with a trend between the two, and what you see in yellow is the average difference between the Fed funds rate and the 30-year mortgage interest rate. And for the last, 20 years or so, they track between 3.5% to 4% in their difference. We just saw it dip down below 3% when we bottomed out at 0 on the Fed funds rate. But generally speaking, there's about a 3.5% to 4% difference. So when they say, yeah, we guarantee that the Fed funds rate is going to be at 4.5% at the end of the year or higher, you need to be knowing mortgage interest rates are going to be 8% or higher at the end of the year. That's where we're heading. So the biggest challenge, will the Fed destroy the housing market in order to stop inflation? Interesting graph in a very boring field of studying graphs. Today's home is more affordable than it was when I got in the business in 1991. This is wage inflation adjusted mortgage payments, meaning back 30 some odd years ago, we all made less money, homes were less expensive. Today we make more money, homes are more expensive. Which was really cheaper when you consider how much people are earning? Well, I can tell you, today's home is cheaper than from 88 to 91. But we're soon going to blast through that. Maybe. Minimum wage, and this is something that I think all of y'all have felt, but just know that the Fed is going to be combating inflation at a time when states have voted and mandated pay raises at the minimum wage level. There's 36% more wage going to minimum wage over the next 4 years, 36%. So what I think is going to end up happening is fewer people are going to be working, making more money. But I guarantee you this, you're going to spend more money for materials and supplies 4 years from now than you are today. I'm not confident in understanding where you're at with the post-COVID garbage and all that, and maybe you're going to see some improvement, maybe you're not in what you're spending on materials. But I can tell you, as a general rule, everything is going to cost a lot more in the future. Politicians lie to the lower end of the wage earners saying, hey, we're raising minimum wage to help you, and it's just a bunch of bunk. All that happens is you get trickle-up economics, and you see everybody make more money, and it's the start of inflation. Now, of course, throwing a couple $1 trillion in the economy probably helped jumpstart that too. But when you raise minimum wage at far greater than historical levels, you should expect inflation across the board. And the irony is this might be a good thing for us, because what we're going to see is wage inflation. Wage inflation is going to help bring that red area down. If they're making more money, then homes technically cost less. I don't think we're going to see interest rates go up to 8% and never come back down. They are going to pummel the economy with increasing the Fed rate until inflation goes away, and then they're going to be dropping the rates. What we have to understand is when you raise interest rates, it has no real impact on the number of people who buy and sell homes. And when you lower interest rates, it has no real impact on the number of people who buy or sell homes. Now, when you make a major change in interest rates, it causes sticker shock if they're going up, and it causes feeding frenzy if they're dropping. Sticker shock means, and most people don't understand this, a typical buyer I deal with spends 9.5 months from the time they unconsciously decide to move until they close in their home. 9.5 months. We measure this based on what they're doing on our website. And so for the first 3 months, they really haven't committed to moving. They're looking at the most ridiculous things. They might be looking at houses in other states. They might be going, ooh, that's pretty. But as soon as they kind of go from a unconscious to a conscious mode, they start doing what we call comparative shopping. They now are starting to pick neighborhoods, starting to pick a home price range, a home value range. So what we have to understand is, if they're getting into that middle stage where there's still 6 months to go before they close on a home, and then you raise rates by 2.5%, everything they look at is terrible. Okay, that's called sticker shock. Hey, I really like $300,000 houses. Yeah, but you can afford 180. Well, what do you mean? Well, they raised mortgage interest rates. That's what it means. That's sticker shock. But here's the thing. Yeah, everything's more expensive, but if someone's got to move, they got to move. Now, they can procrastinate. They go, no, this is just crazy. I'm waiting for home prices to drop. They're like, talk to Joe about supply and demand. But that's what they do. They go into sticker shock and they want some time. And so they back out of the market. If interest rates stabilize and it's still roughly the same payment, they'll all be back in the market within 9 months because they needed to move. Now, if they're a totally discretionary buyer, maybe they go away, but everyone's got to live somewhere. So everybody is prompted to move for some reason, and eventually those reasons come back. Okay, but here's our problem. If it's a 6 to 9 month window for sticker shock, we just got hit with news that we're going to get hit with another sticker shock window in 3 months. That means we're not going to see the market just slow down from April through December with people streaming back in January. We're now kicking that can down the road to saying September of next year. And if that doesn't solve the problem, there's going to be another rate hike, and we're going to kick that can further down the road. So what I'm here to tell you is the number of sales for the next couple of years is going to be low. Very low. Because the lack of home affordability is going to really push people down. But I've got some incredibly wonderful news. Sales after that are going to explode. And we're going to get into some of the whys on that. But, I mean, one word answer, Amazon. And we'll get to that a little bit. So let's get into Tallahassee specifics. This is supply and demand in Tallahassee. Our relative supply of homes is still falling. It's still falling. There are fewer houses available today than there were last month, a year ago, 10 years ago, 12 years ago. This is the lowest number of homes I've ever seen on the market. But we also know that we lagged the U.S. numbers by about 6 months, so hocus pocus, it's going to go up in about 3 months. This is what the high end looks like. I've never been more wrong on a data point than I was on luxury homes about 4 years ago. Now, bear in mind, I wasn't smart enough to forecast a pandemic and a historically low decline in mortgage interest rates to help counter the economic impact of that pandemic. Had I figured that in, I would have been spot on. But we had so many high-end homes in Tallahassee that I said, no matter how good the market is, it's going to remain a buyer's market for high-end homes for the foreseeable future. And me, foreseeable is 5 years, maybe 10 if you're lying. I had no way of seeing us get out of our glut of high-end homes. Well, 2% gets you out of a glut of anything. That's what they did with the mortgage market. So right now, our high-end homes market is balanced. We got about 6 months of supply. I always believed that that would be the first segment of the market to go when interest rates went up, and we're not yet really seeing that. Over the past 3 or 4 years, I can tell you, every year in the past 3 years, we've sold more $1 million plus homes than we sold in all of the 90s put together. And we've done it each year for the past 3 years. Part of that's just inflation, and we're going to naturally sell more high-end definition changes. The one final point on this is you can't apply general market conditions to any specific situation. You know, I started talking about the U.S., I'm now talking about Tallahassee, but like if you're in Southwest Tallahassee versus Northeast Tallahassee, those are two very different markets. You take the general overall guidance to understand what the overall market's doing, but that doesn't mean there aren't opportunities or risk areas that you should know about. If I were to only study one thing and I built homes for a living, I would look at this every month when we publish it. It's not very exciting, not very sexy, but it tells you everything you need to know. If it's a red area, build it. If it's a yellow area, you're taking a risk you shouldn't be taking. If it's a white area, it's a coin toss. And what this is the relative supply of homes in each area at each price point. If it's under 6 months of supply, it's a seller's market. More than half of them are extreme seller's market conditions. Meaning if you can figure out how to build it, build it. Be tactically sound in your lot selection. Sometimes we don't make the wisest choices in buying things. Maybe we buy things because they're on sale. Well, sometimes I see builders buy lots because they're on sale. And then they build a home that nobody wants in an area that has proven that nobody wants to live there. There has never been a more difficult time to find lots, yet an easier time to make the decision in building on a lot that I've ever seen. You might not be able to find it, but if you find it, you know if you're right or wrong. Just only do it if you're right. It's not hard to figure out today. This isn't something that was really important in today's presentation, but I wanted to show how much home costs have risen outside of the norm in really the past 20 years. Okay, the yellow line, all the yellow line is there is it shows the average price growth or value, cost per square foot growth in the 1990s, and then it projects it forward. If we were still building houses at the same cost as we were in the 90s, but on its trajectory upwards due to inflation, if inflation had remained the same, if building costs had remained the same, if wages cost the same, we would expect the average home in Tallahassee, to include resales, to go for about $125 a foot. It's at $160 a foot. And really, the trend is at 160 foot, but the last 7 months are over 170 foot. Prices and costs are soaring. They're soaring because there's not enough homes. Your material costs are soaring because wages are soaring. That means the cost to produce materials is going up, the cost to transport those materials is going up, and then the cost to construct those materials is going up. When labor goes up, everything goes up, and we all need to start figuring out that what is in our mind is the $400,000 house in Tallahassee. It doesn't exist for builders, I don't think. I mean, if you're building attached or you're building apartment units, you got it. You're building even duplex. I don't know that you're going to be able to produce that much longer below $400,000. But this really answers your question. This is what I call the new construction premium. What does a house cost me new versus buying something of a similar size used? Rather than look at dollars, I don't really care about the sales price. What I want to know is the cost, the price per square foot, because that's really more of a home value determinant than price is. Price really shows you what buyers are spending. Price per square foot shows you what sellers are getting. And what this shows is two very important things. The gray dashed line is the trend of the 5-year average difference between new construction and existing homes. So right now we're at about 32%. So today, a new construction home, price per square foot against an equivalent size home, is going to be about 32% more money. Here's what most people don't understand. Yeah, we've come down from 52%, so that sounds great. But in all the 1980s, the 1990s, and into the early 2000s, that number was under 10%. When I started my career, I was selling new homes in Killearn Lakes, and a 1,800 square foot house used versus an 1,800 square foot house new, less than 10% difference. Builders had the flexibility to build what the market needed because they were building so close to what the existing homes were selling. Not so true today. Much truer than it's been probably since 2012. But what I expect is those numbers tightening. I think we need to see them a lot closer together. Problem is, that means we're really saying we're going to pull the existing homes up from a level no one can afford to a level no one can afford-er. Context is a powerful thing. At the peak of the market, the biggest #1 month, back in 2005 or maybe 2004, 230 homes were permitted in a single month. Our biggest one was, I think, March of 2021. We made it to 106. We're not permitting enough homes. Then we're not building the ones we didn't permit. Look at the red line. That's what our current permits trend is showing. It's falling at a time when people are standing in line, take a ticket to buy a house. We didn't build homes. If I was a builder, I'd be scared to build today. We have some evidence to suggest you should be building like crazy. We're going to get to that. New homes versus existing homes. You notice a trend here? The red circle on the right shows that less than 10% of the homes sold in Leon County have been new construction, basically since, I don't know, 2009. I don't know what was special about that year. But if you go back into the early 1990s, that number was in the mid-20s, 25%, 22%. Is it because we're not growing like we were back then? Not really. It's because we're not building enough homes. We should be building fewer homes today than we were building in the 90s. Fewer, not a quarter of, not a third of, not a half of, just fewer. So we've dug a hole. Now here's the neat thing. We can all pat ourselves on the back. Everyone else did it too. Okay, we're just like the smart kids out west. Everybody has been underbuilding. This just puts some raw numbers to it, because if you want to think about it, there's really not such thing as a single-family detached homes market. And there's not really such thing as a condo market. There's not a townhouse market. There's not a mobile home market. There's a market. People got to live somewhere. If it's a place you can live, it counts. Okay, military barracks count. I don't know that we have many of those. Okay, everything counts. If it can be rented or it can be purchased, it counts. So what this graph does is it says, well, let's just look at residential construction and let's add in all that multifamily stuff. Because if I'm sitting here reporting you're not building enough houses, but all the while someone's just pumping out apartment complexes left and right, then I'd be wrong. Because we need more places to live, and apartments count. Well, we're not building apartments either. We're not building enough places to live. This graph is something I look at every month and spend some time on, because this thing is shocking. What this does is it takes in all the MLS and says, well, what percent of the listings are under contract? Okay, well, in normal times, you'd expect about 18% of them to be under contract. That's what happens in a balanced market. Well, on average over the last year, it's been 62%. Imagine you're a home buyer. Hey, we want to go out and look at houses. You can't. What do you mean? No, we're ready to buy. We just talked to Carrie. We're good. We got a bag of money. We want to go look at houses. You can't. Well, what do you mean I can't? There's only one available. And you can't afford it. That's what it's like to be a realtor these days. So we lick the red off their candy. That's our motto. We got to understand that when we get supply levels like we have, we get bidding wars. And bidding wars feel really cool when you're a builder. But I got to tell you, they really suck for a continuation of health in housing. I will tell you, and I said this last year, I said this the year before, said it the year before that. If one of you had built an extra 1,000 homes last year, you wouldn't have a single one of them today. They'd all be sold and gone. Absolute fact. We're underbuilt in Tallahassee, by my estimates, between 2,500 and 5,000 homes. The reason there's such a big range on that is I don't do a really good job of gathering data for our surrounding counties, and those bedroom communities are now part of the Tallahassee housing market, but I can still tell you proximity matters. So the Leon County numbers matter, but to a degree, I really would have to start bringing in the data from Wakulla County. The problem in America is the same as the problem in Tallahassee. And everybody in America thinks it's a local problem. but it's not. It's a local problem nationally. And it's called NIMBYism, not in my backyard. What happens is, I hire one of you guys, you knock down all the trees on a piece of land, you put me a big fat house in the middle of it, and then I become a conservationist. Not near me, that ain't right. You can't take down trees, okay? And in this community, we don't want those kind of people here. What kind of people? Neighbors, okay? That's what's happening in America. And everybody who owns a piece of land has far fewer rights to that land than the public does. You can buy a parcel of land zoned for exactly what you want to do with it. And it'll probably take you 2.5 years and a lot of under-the-table money to get it approved. And that's not Tallahassee, that's everywhere. California beat us to it. They've been sorry at this far longer than us. But if you'll study a little bit of the California housing market, that's where we're heading. Because even today, with not enough houses, we're seeing the craziest outcomes for developers. And if you look at it at a national level, you go, yeah, they could live here in Tallahassee. That sounds familiar. So it's not really something we're dealing with that no one else is seeing. But that's why, as a country, there's no government plan for housing. There's no government plan for growth. I mean, in the 1990s, we convened a Council of Citizens Advisory Board to talk about the flyover out by Killarn. They said, no, don't do it. 20 years later, we built it. I mean, that's what Tallahassee does to plan for the future. We have Capitol Circle that's not a circle. We have a truck route that doesn't enter the interstate. That's what we do in Tallahassee, but apparently that's what they do everywhere. Again, this goes back to how healthy is our market. Okay, and what I do is I compare the number of foreclosures and lis pendens filings, and a lis pendens is basically, hey, you've got mail. Oh, we want your house back. Okay, so a lis pendens is the start of the foreclosure process. A foreclosure technically is the sale of a home at the courthouse through the foreclosure process. So one's the alpha, one's the omega, the beginning and the end, amen. So when we look at the number of foreclosures, the number of lis pendens, and compare them to the number of homes sold, I don't have data but back to 2008, but it's at a low on my graph, and the foreclosure can't get much lower. Okay, back in, so today, 5 lis pendens are filed for every 100 homes sold. That doesn't mean 100 homes are sold and 5 people default. It just means currently 5 people are in default, and we just sold 100 homes. Okay, well, in October 2010, 95 lis pendens were filed for every 100 homes sold. Okay, times are different today. A lot of people only have a memory of a housing market crash in 2008, and they think we're going to do the same thing. Might be bloodier, but it won't be the same thing. It's going to be different. Again, this is Tallahassee data. Year-to-date home sales. The market's only down 6%. Through August, it's just down 6%. Just don't believe that for a second, because we're looking at 25 and 30% every month. The first quarter was up big time. Okay, interest rates have more than doubled. Under 3% in December. You're out shopping for a home. You're going, well, you know, the kids have started school. We're thinking maybe we wait for the summer. Okay, interest rates go from 2.25% to 6.5%. Ooh, that's a jump. You talk about sticker shock. They got some shock. So the market literally stopped in its tracks. When the year ends, that's probably going to be closer to down 15, 16%, but that's only because we had an incredible first quarter. Otherwise, it'd be down 25%. So let's talk a little bit about the good news. And this is something you have to internalize, because everything you're going to hear in the real world is negative. And it's right to be negative out there in the real world. Bad things are happening. We printed a lot of money. Now we got to raise interest rates to stop the ensuing inflation. Okay? But I can tell you, and some of y'all have been around here longer than I have. Have you seen this much economic activity in Tallahassee in the last 30 years? Literally, it's like, well, they're building Innovation Park, and we're going to be the next tech center in that area between Pensacola and Jacksonville. We're going to be like Silicon Valley, and like, oh, they hired 4 people. Cool. All right. That was the impact. Well, the Amazon Fulfillment Center, 1,000 jobs. North American Aerospace. Does anyone even not know what that is? These are people who, they exist. This is a company that exists all around the world, already in North Carolina. They recycle 747s and sell 100% of the aircraft. Windows go here, doors go here, aluminum goes here, boom. 985 jobs. Okay, that is an international company at our international airport flying an international aircraft to chew up. Burrell Aviation, no idea what they do. 738 jobs, international. North Florida Innovation Labs, 650 jobs. Any one of these would be big news for Tallahassee. Any one. But we're getting them all within a 24-month period. And you know what? They pay them enough money, they got to live in something other than a cardboard box. FSU Health Center, 350 jobs. Danfoss is growing again, 240 jobs. Then there's 3 others that are 300 plus jobs. What's not included in here is the West Side facility that Amazon's putting in. That's probably 500 jobs. I have no clue. It's a guess. But even without that Amazon, we're looking at 4,263 jobs. And you understand, every time you add a job, you add 1.5 to 2 service sector jobs. So when we say there's 4,200 jobs, we're looking at 10,000 new people living in Tallahassee. 10,000 people divided by our 2.3 people per house means there's a lot of houses to build, not counting the hole we're already in. I would guess out of those 10,000 jobs, several hundred will be able to afford $1 million plus house. So that helps our high-end market. Really good news there. So here's the kicker. We don't know how people are going to afford homes, but there are going to be more people, and they're going to have jobs, and we do expect interest rates to finally come down, but not in the next year. So, you know, just figure it out. The almighty Fed controls our future. And if you haven't been one to pay attention to the Fed meetings and what they're discussing, probably would behoove you to do so. And all you're really looking for, you don't need to watch their meeting, okay? But what you do need to look for is what is their expressed sentiment going forward? Because all they're doing is leading the market with that expressed sentiment. If they if they say times are getting tougher, you know interest rates are going to go up. If they say we think we're going to be able to ease off of this in the future, market's going to go down. Our rates are going to go down. It's that simple. But what you really want to understand is what is their short range, mid range forecast. And they're lying on their long range. We want to understand that mid range because that tells you what's really going to happen at their next meeting. They've got enough data to know that their current change is not going to fix our current problem. But they figured it was as much pain as the market should bear. The biggest issue we have today is we have a broken Fed policy that says the only way to fix our economy is to collapse it. And housing, we get to go where the Fed wants us to go. So what did they do last time? It wasn't so much they raised the Fed funds rate. They just rewrote the rules on borrowing money. And they did it for a good reason, but I think they sharpened their pencils a little too tight. We had ninja loans back then, no income, no job, no assets, meaning just give me some money, I promise I'll pay it back. Those loans actually were convenient for people that self-employed and things like that. They weren't a bad loan program all the time. They just got dogpiled on and they lowered the credit score requirements on them, and that was really part of the problem in 2008. The housing market would have collapsed even without the ninja loans though. Everyone in here feels like you overbuilt the market, and that's why you paid a penance from 2008 to 2012. The reality is we probably overbuilt it a little bit, but it wasn't nearly as significant as the impact because the government taking away buyers, and that's their only solution to a housing problem. Everything I ever needed to know about supply and demand, I learned as a kid. Carrie and I grew up on the same street. I could hold a lemonade stand. And at noon, when it was hot as hell in Tallahassee, I could get $3 a glass. At 4:30, when there was no one else out there, I couldn't get a nickel a glass. Supply and demand dictate where things are going to go, and the government only impacts demand. They always go in and they shut down the pipeline of buyers. They do it by either increasing rates or by changing the loan policies. Okay, and when you crush demand, the supply doesn't rise. Okay, the supply rises when you have too many homes. But when you guys can't build homes because there's no one to buy homes, we stay with the supply problem. So now the people that no longer can buy homes because of the lending standards, they now go over into the rental line, and that's going to make rents soar even more because there's not enough homes. The government's only cure is to crush us. And the good news for everybody in this room is you live in Tallahassee, and we're going to have economic activity for some reason. We never have before, but you know, I say vote Democrat. We need a Democrat in the governor's office. That'll get us more state workers back. We'll have a feeding frenzy for years. We've got a lot of jobs heading this way. We just got to figure out how to build homes, you know, for twice of what you think it should cost to build them. What happens when mortgage interest rates rise? No kidding. Here's 10 examples when mortgage rates really rose and home prices went up. People are false logically sound. They hear something, it sounds right, and they believe it. Well, interest rates are up, prices are going to drop. Well, how about connecting a few of those steps? It could be true. Interest rates could go up and prices could drop. Here's 10 times in history where it didn't happen. And why didn't it happen? Because the supply of homes was insufficient for it to happen. And demand continued despite rising prices. Because most of these were not major major interest rate hikes when you compare them with today. Nowhere on there will you see when they doubled. So interest rates rising does not affect home prices. Interest rates rising doesn't even affect demand over time. Major changes impacts demand. Minor changes, it's all part of the housing solution we've seen for the last 130 years. It's normal. So I try to explain this to home buyers, and they're telling me, yeah, I'm waiting for prices to fall. I'm like, okay, did you know over the last 130 years they've fallen 7 times? Over the last 80 years they've fallen twice? If you told me in 1960 you were waiting for home prices to fall, you'd have bought a house in 2007. I mean, if you want to wait 57 years or 47 years, okay, but they're not going to fall from where they are today. They're just going to fall from where they get to. Home prices don't fall. If you bet on home prices falling, you're going to lose 80-some-odd% of the time. They might fall this time. This is a pretty significant economic impact. But fundamentally, they can't fall. So if they fall, it's going to be due to a little bit of market panic and a little bit of demand being stomped into the ground. And we thought demand got stomped in the ground 2012, 2013. It'll be numbers like that. 2,000 home sales in Leon County. And we've already had 3,500 this year. 2,000 for the year. That's our potential downside next year. Trouble is, Amazon will be starting to move people in next year. So it's going to be really hard to have that crappy of a market with all this economic activity. When do home prices fall? It's real simple. When someone wants to sell a home and they can't, they lower the price. That's it. If someone wants to sell their home and there's 15 people begging for it, they're probably not going to lower the price. Okay, home prices fall when the supply of homes grossly outnumbers the demand for them. And generally speaking, 6 months of supply is what we consider a balanced market. Though today it might be more like 4 months of supply, and that's a whole other topic. But we still don't have enough homes. Again, this is not 2008. This is U.S. housing market data. There were 4 million homes on the market. Now there's 1.3 million. That's a 70-some% decline. Foreclosures are not going to happen equally at 1% across the U.S. There are going to be some areas that have been hit economically hard that'll have some foreclosure activity. We're not going to see them here. There's just no need. Anyone want to test this out? Just quit making your mortgage payment. Go about 6 months. That's probably about all the rope they'll give you. And then just sell your home. Walk away with the cash. Your credit will be a little sore, but you're fine. So here's basically the same look for Tallahassee. 3,300 homes back in 2009. Now we're down to 918. That's down 72%. There's 918 homes in Leon County. I know them all by name. There are no homes for sale. Really, I'm in kind of the concluding stages here. What I encourage you to do is keep up with some of the market, but I mean, if you're going to be relatively lazy about it, just key in on what Powell says. Because he's going to dictate where we're heading. Talk to your lender every once in a while, say any crazy news coming down the pipeline. You know, you're going to have to do push-ups to get a home loan. That's really all you need to do. Pay attention to the chair. Listen to the market. Today's buyer is facing an affordability crisis, but there is news that shows that wages are coming up. We know the low-end wages are coming up. We know the mid-range wages are next. We're going to see that rebound, and that's going to bring that actual affordability level back down to historically somewhat normal. Don't be afraid to look at cost-saving ideas when you're building. You're really trying to target is a price point. If you somehow can figure out how to bring a single-family home to the market under $400,000, I mean, literally, you can put a take-a-ticket number wheel out in front yard and sell it to the first 10 that pull a number. Pay attention to the Fed and the mortgage interest rates. Recognize the current market cycle outside of the current noise. The current market cycle is there's not enough homes. It's a good time to be a builder. Current noise is interest rates are going through the roof, there's no buyers. It's a bad time to be a builder. Listen through the noise. We need homes. Find an investor who you can build homes for, because I got to tell you, investors are hungry for houses right now. New homes are the best to buy as an investor. You don't have any real maintenance expenses. Well, for most of you guys, what, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years? You know, so investors might be a good way around this, because we do need the houses. If we could figure out how to pump an extra 3,000 houses into the market next year, it'd be awesome. It's just like the lemonade stand. If we can get more houses than we need, prices will stabilize. If we remain less houses than we need, prices are going to move up higher than normal. I put out information 3 different ways. You can see it on YouTube, you can subscribe to my newsletter, you can read my daily blog. It's all free. Try to make this information very accessible. My YouTube channel, Joe Manausa Real Estate channel on YouTube, I mean, literally once a week, I put out a report that really tries to focus in on one key statistic and get across how it impacts the market. Some of y'all have been subscribing to my newsletter since 2007. That goes out every Monday morning at 8:35, and I don't think I've missed one since 2007. So again, one statistic, a little bit of a write-up on what it's telling us, and if you take that in once a week, you'll have a pretty good feel for the overall market. It focuses more on Tallahassee. My YouTube channel is focusing more on the U.S. And then finally, the blog. We put out something once a day, and 4 out of the 5 are neighborhood reports. And it's just telling you how that neighborhood's doing. But what it allows you to see very quickly is what is the average price per square foot, what is the average sales price, what's the average size home being sold there. And then you can go to the end of it, and there's a table of all sales. And I can tell you, if you will Google any neighborhood by name and then put my last name with it, you'll come to my most recent reports on that neighborhood. So if you're thinking, you know, hey, what about buying a really, really dilapidated, poorly maintained home in Waverly Hills, what can I do with that? Now you can read what's going on in Waverly Hills. You can scroll to the bottom and go, what are the highest sales they've had? And then you can pull those up on our website to see more about the house. And you can actually go in there and go, okay, somebody bought a 1960s house, they renovated, they sold it for $950,000. Kind of gives you a feel for what you can get away with. In Waverly Hills, you can get away with a lot. Some neighborhoods, not so much. Anyway, it's there as a resource.
All right, well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yep. All you.